Well, if you've seen The Wolf of Wall Street, you might be wondering, why is Jordan Belfort giving investment advice and advice to the US government? Well, in 1999, he pleaded guilty to stock market manipulation and running a penny stock scam. Since then, though, he's reinvented himself as a speaker and an author, focusing on ethical investing. He now offers advice on sales techniques and responsible financial practices. Jordan Belfort, the actual Wolf of Wall Street, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to join us from Miami. Great to have you with us. I mean, it seems
My pleasure.
It seems like you've really rebuilt your life. I'm assuming you've rebuilt your bank balance since the darker days of 20 or so years ago. What are you up to these days?
Well, as you said, I don't really give investment advice, so to speak, to individual people. Oh, sorry about that. Wait 1 second. I don't give investment advice to people, but I wrote a book on, how people should invest. And it did really, really well. It was a bestseller. It's called The Wolf of Investing. And it was, basic strategy that I think it's been proven over the last 50 to 75 years about like long-term investing versus speculating. So it's really about that. I'm also a big fan of Bitcoin, which I talk about in the book. But again, not buying Bitcoin to trade in and out, but buying Bitcoin for the next 5 years and so forth, and making it maybe 5-10% of your portfolio. So that's on the investing side. But on the sales trading side, yeah, certainly. I mean, I do that. I give entrepreneurial advice to companies, train their sales forces, their managers. Also, I'm very heavily into artificial intelligence now, and I have a company that is about to really go out of stealth mode, so to speak. And it's about actually an AI voice agent that actually is trained to sell like me. And it's a killer, phone salesperson. It does lead qualification. It does agentic workflow. So I think the future of the world is AI. And I'm happy to be on the cutting edge of it. I believe in it. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you this later on, but I'll ask you now since you're talking about it. I mean, do you think the 23-year-old you would have perhaps decided to, in today's world, go straight into the crypto currency universe, or do you think you'd have bypassed Wall Street altogether?
It's difficult to say. I mean, listen, the things that make sense when you're 23 don't make a lot of sense, 30 years later, right? Or 40 years later. So, for me, I really can't say what would have happened, but what I do know is this, is that the lessons I learned from going through that experience really have allowed me to create an incredible life right now and learn from my mistakes. And I think that's the most important thing, is that everyone makes mistakes and you can't be defined by your mistakes. And many people go through life after they failed at something and they get defined by that versus using that failure as a lesson, and they learn, they grow, they do better. And that's how you rebuild your life step by step. It wasn't easy. I worked very hard to do it. And I, was very careful to maintain my ethics and integrity this time the whole way through. And I think that's what life's about. It's about progress. It's not about perfection. It's about learning from what you did wrong and growing in consequence.
We're going to be talking quite a bit about you and your life in just a few minutes. But because we were just talking about US politics as well, I'd just like to ask you a little bit about how you're finding the United States at the moment. We're 5 weeks into the second Trump presidency. I just want to ask you if you like the overall direction your country's going in.
I am a massive fan of President Trump. I think he's unbelievable. I honestly, more than ever now. And I think with Elon Musk by his side and the cabinet he's picked, listen, the U.S. has got a budget deficit that is literally out of control and will bankrupt the country if nothing is done. It will. It's simple math at this point, right? So unless things are dramatically changed and the bureaucracy and spending is cut and there's massive fraud, waste, and abuse, it's like the trifecta, fraud, waste, and abuse, right? I used to always wonder, I said, how is it that a country as awesome as the United States, with an economy so vibrant, so many people with massive ingenuity, how is it that we can't pay our bills? How is it that we're in debt? It doesn't make sense. And then you suddenly find out that there's massive fraud and waste and overspending. And that's how it is. So if you were just simply to start running this country like it were a business, I know it can't be all business, but you had some business applied to this country, we would be paying off our deficit very quickly. And I'm really hoping and praying that, Donald Trump, President Trump, with Elon Musk and the rest of the people at Doge are going to get that done.
Okay, sounds like you're a big fan. Is there anything you don't like so far, what we've seen in the last 5 weeks?
Not a single thing. And the reason is because while President Trump says things that seem outlandish, they're all part of a much larger negotiation, a bigger picture. And the things he's accomplished just in 5 weeks are incredible. I mean, massive investment in the United States. Wars are coming to an end, which thank God they are. It's ridiculous. And I wouldn't change one thing he's done, not a single thing.
I just want to cast your mind back to the 1990s when you were in New York earning enormous telephone number type salaries and bonuses on Wall Street. Did you never bump into Donald Trump or sit next to him at a smart restaurant? Because he would have been going to some of the same places as you, I'd have thought.
Sure, I did. We actually flew to Atlantic City together to one of his casinos. He had this great Augusta helicopter. I think it was 1990, maybe 89 or 90. And I was gambling very, very large back then. And myself and another friend of mine, we flew with Donald Trump to Trump Castle. We landed on the roof of the castle. We landed on the steel pier with the Trump Plaza casino, right? And we spent the day and gambled, and it was really cool.
What about Elon Musk? He's about 9 years younger than you, but I'm wondering if you see a bit of your younger self in him.
Listen, again, I'm a huge fan of Elon. In some level, I think that, certain decisions that you make, they put you down a certain path, and then you're on that path. It takes a while to get off that path, which I thankfully did. But I think if I would have went into high tech, I could have certainly, not be Elon Musk, but certainly been a major player in tech. Thankfully, I'm in tech right now with AI. But I think Elon Musk is a very special character. He's brilliant. And the principles he uses to run his businesses, I agree with 100%. I really do. And, success begets more success. He's able to recruit the best talent in the world. So it's becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I love the way he sets these incredibly high goals, and he very often misses them. But it doesn't matter because, halfway to his goal is a victory versus people who are not very successful. They set goals that are on the lower side and they hit them. But what's that? It's mediocrity. So I love the strategies he uses to push people, to push himself. And and it's evident that he's the richest man in the world.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm surprised. Everything you've told me, the fact you've, been sort of slightly in Donald Trump's slipstream during the course of the last 30 years as well. You admire those two men, Elon Musk, Donald Trump. I mean, have you been in touch with them? And were they to say, Jordan, come and work with us, would you take up the offer?
If I was asked, of course, I'd take up the offer that served my country, but no one has asked me yet.
All right. Let's talk about the film, The Wolf of Wall Street, and the book, which, of course, you wrote. Do you sometimes watch that film back again? I mean, it came out, 12 years ago, I think it was. But do you sometimes switch on that film and say to yourself, wow, there is a Hollywood blockbuster film about my life?
Yeah, I mean, you can't escape it. You just flick through the channels and it's on somewhere, right? I've watched it. I mean, listen, once a year, some of my friends want to watch it with me, and I love the movie. I love the first half of the movie. I love the first 80%. And then it starts to go downhill, right? You're like, oh, okay, time to turn the channel, right? But listen, again, I look at my life as a whole, right? And that was one chapter of my life, and it was an amazing chapter, right? And it's who I am today. I mean, it made me into who I am today. The mistakes, the lessons, the pain, the drug addiction, all those things really serve to help me grow. And I'm continuing growing. None of us have stopped in growing. If we do, you're dying. So, but it was an amazing period of my life and an awesome movie.
Some of my colleagues here in the newsroom were asking me to put this question to you. I mean, out of that whole film, what percentage would you say is fact and what percentage would you say is pure fiction?
I think 90% is true, 10% is fiction.
What's not true?
Like, for example, there's a scene where I punched my wife in the stomach. I never did that. And that just never did anything like that. In fact, they asked me for my permission to put it in there because it was not factually true. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, whatever you want to do. It's a movie. It's not, it's not everything is true. So that was one thing. What else? A lot of the things that weren't true had to do with the timeline. So they changed the timeline to serve the narrative, right? And they also collapsed characters. So, the Mark Hanna character, the Donnie character, much of what Mark Hanna was collapsed into Donnie and all other people as well. So they combined characters. It was very clever what they did. The scene where I met the FBI agent on the boat, that wasn't true, but it was a great scene anyway, and I helped write that scene. But generally speaking, it was very true. I mean, I think the one business thing that was inaccurate is that, the idea was that we were taking companies that didn't really exist public, and that's just false. That was just the easy way of saying that we're doing something wrong, which we were. But it had nothing to do with bad companies. It had to do with manipulating the stocks of companies, which is not as exciting and a bit more difficult to explain. So, but generally the feeling, the craziness in the boardroom, the yacht sinking, the car crash on the quay, all of that stuff happened.
Yeah, we've been looking at some clips while you've been talking. We saw Leonardo DiCaprio there playing you. I wonder if you liked the fact that he played your part. And I gather the two of you got to know each other quite well. Are you still friends?
Yeah. Leo's a great guy. I mean, I chose him. That was my choice. It was between him and Brad Pitt, and I think that's a pretty great, little, thing to choose from, one or the other. And at the end, Leo came with Scorsese, so it was the perfect combination. And yes, we spent a lot of time together, about a year, and you see how incredibly talented he is when you watch the movie. He channels me really, really effectively.
Let's move on from the film and the book and start talking a bit more about you and what you've been up to. Of course, you were ordered to pay back 110 million, I gather, US dollars to people you were deemed to have defrauded, or whatever the right word is. Have you paid that money back?
Yeah, well, so here's the truth. The truth is it was not $110 million was an arbitrary number, because many people got back a lot of money. So the real loss was probably closer to 40 or 50 million. Still a massive loss, by the way, but it's not close. And you see that with every time they say, like with Bernie Madoff, was a huge scam. 50 billion. It turned out to be 5 billion or 10 billion. In other words, they just have a top line number. So there was a fund that was created. We disgorged a lot of money. And at the end of the day, there was $545,000 left in the fund, and no one was claiming the money. No one was claiming it. Since then, I still pay money, for another 6 months or so into the fund, but it's not going to people. There are no people claiming money. So that's the true story.
You often get asked in interviews if you're sorry about what you did, and the interviews I've watched, you've said yes, you sound remorseful, you say remorseful things. So I want to ask you a different question. What do you not regret about that chapter of your life?
I don't regret that it happened, because I don't think living with regret is healthy for your soul, your spirit, and your mind in general. But that doesn't mean that I'm not, really sorry for some of the things I did. Anything that I did that hurt another person, whether it was financially or in any other way, right? I mean, unless you're a psychopath or a sociopath, you would go back to, well, I wish I would have never done that. Of course. But the thing is, you can't change the past. And dwelling in the past is probably the most disempowering thing. Being defined by your past is disempowering. What's empowering is learning the lessons from your past and becoming a better person as a result. And that's, I think, what my life exemplifies.
Yeah, and let's go back in your life and rewind even further and talk about your childhood, because I'd like to know and understand what it was that, set out the life path that you took. What made you want to go to Wall Street? I know you were very enterprising as a youngster. It sounds like you had a quest for wealth. Is that what it was?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I absolutely did. Not sure why, but like I can remember as far back as I can remember wanting to be rich. And I came from a lower middle class family, but highly educated. We had everything we needed, but not what we wanted. And also, I lived in proximity to an area not far was Long Island, where all the wealthy people were. And there was this whole notion, one day we'll get rich and move to Long Island. That was like a kind of the mantra of my neighborhood, right? And I was a very good student, did very well in school. And my whole family does great, scholastically, and everyone's very successful. So my path was really, I went to college, I was going to be a doctor, and then said, you know what, forget it, I'll go to dental school instead, it's quicker. Ultimately, I hated that. After a day, I dropped out, and I started, in sales, and I broke all the records in sales. Like right away, I realized I was this natural born salesperson of the highest level. And that was really what changed everything. And ultimately, I invented a system called the straight line that's still used all over the world today. And that came to define the path of my life. It took me to Wall Street. It took me to open up a firm that became the largest of its kind in the country and ultimately destroy me. And then I built myself back up, learned from the errors, and became the person I am today.
So you did your 22 months in prison. You say you learnt your lessons. You were, of course, kind of bling before bling was even a thing. And when you hit rock bottom, I want to know what it was about your bling life that you missed the most. I mean, you had yachts, you had cars, you had flashy watches, you seemed to have everything. What did you miss most, and how did it feel to hit rock bottom and lose everything?
I think far more than the money, the greatest feeling in the world was when I hit rock bottom. That was awesome. It was terrible as I was hitting rock bottom. In other words, it's very hard. When I really had, and I had nothing, zero, I zeroed out. And I was like such a breath of fresh air to completely start again from scratch. It's very difficult when you have $1 million or $2 million left and you're used to spending a lot of money, and $1 million or $2 million is not a lot of money when you're not making money, right? That's the worst part of all. So I think for me, the difficult thing was waiting to go to jail. That was really the time that was most emotionally trying. Once I got to jail, I was like, great, I'll do my time. And then I actually taught myself to write in jail, and I came out and wrote this book. And it was very difficult. It took a year to write, but I learned a great lesson about delaying my gratification, spending the time to really work on something and create something that's really valuable to people. People wanted to read the book, and ultimately fueled this new life was the book. So I don't think that it was really losing the money. I always knew I'd make money. I'm not one of the greatest salespeople in the world. I'm always going to make money if that's just what it's all about. But it was really about, not being with my children, my reputation being destroyed. Once I hit bottom, it was awesome.
Yeah, and you say that, and it's really ironic because you obviously got a great mind, you got great selling techniques, you're extremely resourceful. I mean, I'm wondering if you were attracted to danger, because your company, Stratton Oakmont, had it been a legitimate business, purely legitimate, would probably have done even better in the longer term than it did during that sort of short, sharp burst. So why didn't you keep it legit?
100%. Good question. Part of it's bad luck. I met some people. What happened was my ability to train salespeople outstripped my ability to find the best stocks out there. And I grew too fast. It was like a lesson I really learned, that sometimes just rapid growth is not the best thing if you don't have the other side, the ability to deliver the product the way you want. Now, it wasn't that the product was bad, so to speak, the stocks themselves, but we had so much buying going into the stocks that the prices became inflated. It was a problem. And the stocks that we were specializing in were coming to reflect the value of Stratton growing so rapidly versus the companies themselves. That set the dynamic. Now, in addition, I met some people. I chose my mentors very poorly, which is a really important lesson. You need to choose your mentors wisely. And I didn't. And it was some people that were doing things illegitimately, and they were like, oh, this is how it's done. And deep down in my heart, I knew it was wrong. But you justify it. Oh, well, everyone's doing it. That's the first step down the road to moral hell, is that taking that first step over the ethical line, which I'll never do again, So, and that started the cascade of events. And you're right, 100%. If I would have not done that, I would have hit the internet boom. I was an IPO company. I would have made a few $1 billion for sure. It was a dunk shot. So lesson learned.
Yeah, and it was the mid-'80s. You were 25 when Wall Street came out, that iconic film, and perhaps Gordon Gekko was one of your mentors. I mean, you say 100%. You can. He was he? You say you can read people. I've heard you say that in video clips, and you can spot what kind of a buyer you're sitting in front of or standing in front of. So I want to ask you to read me. Who am I? What kind of a buyer am I? Go on.
I can't read someone. I'm not a mind reader. I can't look at you. Let me see your face. You're easy to sell to. What I can do is by asking you a series of questions and taking you down the straight line, so to speak, engaging in a conversation where I'm in control, gathering intelligence, building rapport, and then ultimately presenting my idea to you, I could start to see, as whether you're buying or not, I start to say, okay, well, they should be buying at this point because I've made the value proposition very clear. They have the financial resources to why they're still not buying. Why is that? Well, it's one of two things. Either they're not certain that my product is the best, they don't trust me, they don't trust the company that stands behind me, or they're just really difficult to sell to. And if it turns out that it's the latter, then there's strategies I would use to take someone that is very difficult to sell to and temporarily lower their threshold to take action. So it's really not about like mind reading. It's about simply following a system of asking questions, building rapport, and you'll very quickly see as the sale unfolds what type of buyer you're sitting in front of.
And Jordan, I just wanted to ask you, I mean, first of all, do you keep up with a lot of the people you knew during those heady years of your company, Stratton Oakmont? Are you still in touch with those people? And I also want to ask you about building relationships with so much money sort of on the table and so much money at stake. I mean, presumably you had real trust issues with some of the people around you.
Like wives, maybe. Like, I don't listen. Here's the thing: my friends today from back then are my friends that were there before it happened. So I have like very close friends that were friends of mine when I was 2 years old and 4 years old that worked for me, but like we're still great friends. And of course, some of the people I did keep in touch with, not that many, but from time to time, whenever I see them around, that's often we always hug, hello, how's it going? My assistant from back in the day, who was in the movie, she's a close friend still. We had dinner the other night. So yeah, I see the FBI agent a lot. He's a good friend of mine, the FBI agent that indicted me. We became very good friends. So I see and speak to him often.
I mean, all of that was, what, 30 plus years ago? I mean, the world has moved on so much since then. I mean, things have changed so much.
34 years ago. Started 37 years ago.
Exactly. So we're coming up to 40 years. I mean, and think of how politically correct office environments are nowadays and things that, we saw in that film. You wouldn't get away with those today, would you?
No, I mean, I think the world is starting to shift a little bit back towards the center, thank God. But I think it's good that the world is not the way it was. And I think that's a function of many things. It's, there is, a society and progress is made in certain areas. I'm not a progressive, so to speak, right? But I think that there were things that were happening in the workplace that were not good. Those things didn't really happen at Stratton. Honestly, it was, if you asked any woman that worked at Stratton, no one was harassed. No one was taken advantage of. It was just a party for everybody. If someone harassed a woman, probably 10 guys would beat them up. It was not like that. It was no like Harvey Weinstein insanity. It just didn't happen like that. But there was things going on that by today's standards would be like, what the hell? I mean, it's like insane. But I can assure you back then it seemed perfectly normal, especially within the four walls of the boardroom. That's the truth.
What was the maddest anecdote you can remember from those that party time at Oakmont?
I can't speak to that on this channel. Let's move past. That's the one question I won't answer because I don't want to shock your viewers. So let's move on.
Oh, all right. Okay. Fair enough. Let's talk about something else then. I wanted to ask you about your advice for people who are watching, because you do give a lot of these tutorials online. I've seen a couple of them. Just wondering what your money and investment rules are. I mean, today's younger generation, someone thinking of investing a bit of money, what would you tell them? Stocks, real estate, crypto? What would be your advice?
Very simple. I would take the bulk of my money and put it into a S&P 500 no-load fund, just an index fund that tracks the S&P 500. I would reinvest my dividends, put money in whenever I can, no matter what. Don't even look at the price. Don't care. Put it in a tax-free account if possible. Maximize your tax advantages by doing that so you don't have to pay taxes on your dividends. Just hold it and let it compound for the next 20, 30, or 40 years. You'll end up with millions and millions of dollars. The S&P compounds at about 11% a year, and that really adds up, especially towards the end. That's number one. Second thing I would do is I'd buy Bitcoin. I'd buy at least 10% of my portfolio I put into Bitcoin. I really believe in it. I don't care that it's down right now. It makes me want to buy more. You have to buy Bitcoin and hold it for the next, I think, 3 to 5 years or longer if you really want to do it right. And I don't think it's about trading in and out. There's people that do that and I'm sure do well, but you have to be professional. It's very dangerous. I would not buy any other crypto unless you want to have fun. Like, today the SEC announced meme coins are now legal. but they're just like nothing. And then the disclosure is, hey, you're buying nothing. It's fun. It's like a Beanie Baby or whatever. Great. You can buy meme coins, but that's just speculation. And you got to know that every dollar you put into that, you're probably going to lose. So it's just for fun, not for like seriously to make money, right? And then as far as real estate goes, excellent investment, but you got to know what you're doing. Make sure that you're, you've educated yourself, that you're not being taken advantage of. And other than that, I think that, it's just really not much to do. I think it's listen, inactivity is your friend when it comes to investing. Active activity is the enemy. Trying to go in and out, buy, sell. You don't make money like that.
All right, that's sound advice. Just lastly, I know you're really tired of people asking you to sell that pen. You must see and hear that the whole time when you do interviews. So I want to ask you something different. I'll put you on the spot here, Jordan. Sell for us, in a couple of words, this news channel, Al Arabiya News. It's brand new. We've only been on air for a few months. Sell it for us. Come on.
Okay, well, first of all, I have to ask you, before I could sell something, I have to find out about who you're trying to sell it to. Who's the audience you're trying to attract? What are your best programs? What's your value proposition? Tell me why, and I'll sell it.
We're on top of the news. We're ahead of the news. Big focus on the Middle East, massive focus on the United States. Our viewers, it's a global audience. And we're not a shouty channel. We're a channel that lets people that speak to us, we give them the courtesy to finish their sentences without cutting them off. How would you sell that?
Well, I would put those together into a language pad, and I would say, listen, we're a new channel, but we stand out for a few key reasons here that make us better than everybody else. And all I would say is this: I'm not asking you to dedicate your whole life to this channel. Just give us a shot. Spend an hour, watch one of our programs, see what you think. You'll notice some key differences. Number one, we're not a shouting channel. We let our guests speak. We have an open view. We focus on the Middle East and DC, what's happening in the U.S., which is key. So you're going to be better off in your life simply by taking in this information, not being preached to, not having someone give their opinion and extort the news. We take things down the middle, straight as they go. And I think that in the next few years, we're going to be the biggest channel in the Middle East where people like you will go to get their news, our first source. We just want you to give us a shot. Don't marry us. Let's date. Watch the program an hour here, an hour there. And believe me, you'll be very glad you did.
That is extremely helpful. I'm going to play that to my boss after this and really appreciate that. Has anyone asked you to do that before?
Yeah, here and there. But I think that, just to understand, I would never do that normally. But if someone asked me, hired me, I would spend like a day researching it and then coming up with the perfect way to do it. You get it? There's a very big difference in winging it and making stuff up on the fly. And that's true with all sales. A lot of it is in preparation, and you got to prepare yourself. That was just a quick boom, but I would do a far better job by preparing myself, and so would anybody else.
Well, we all like to hear very much indeed. And we really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. It's been really good fun. Jordan Belfort, the actual Wolf of Wall Street, thank you so much for speaking to Al Arabiya News.
Take care. Bye-bye.